Welcome back to Total Racing. I just got done rebuilding the NV4500 on our bug out RV build. Now, there's a couple things that I want to point out on these NV4500s if you're looking to buy one used, because they seem to be made of gold for some reason, so that you buy one that's actually still good. Because when they're loose, you can't drive them, and there's so many things on these that can be deceiving and look perfect, and they won't be. And I'm mainly talking about the Synchros. The Synchros on these things can be so deceiving, they'll look absolutely perfect when you pop that cover off and you're looking at them. You're like, oh man, this thing is in such perfect shape. And it won't necessarily be in perfect shape. And I have in my hand right now a perfect example of that. This is the third gear Synchro from this transmission that I knew was bad when I bought it, because I bought this in a running driving truck. The only thing I felt wrong with it was third gear Synchro. It turns out that is all that was wrong with it, but I did do the fifth gear upgrade and all that stuff, which involves changing the main shaft. I got a couple of these transmissions sitting out on the other side. One's a Chevy, one's a Dodge. Let's go pop the top off of them. They're unknown to me, the condition. I bought them both loose, so, and I did not inspect them beforehand. So we'll be popping these things, popping the top off of both of these for the first time. So let's go take a look at them. I'm going to show you how to check these Synchros to make sure they're good, since most likely they're all going to look just fine. All right, so I got two NVs here. So this is a Chevy, and this is an early Dodge, so you can tell that by the shifter being like this and not square. Okay, I already had the shifter off this. Actually, I have another short I was going to make on modifying the shifters on these. So we'll put that over there for now. This is just a case vent. That's all that is. All you got to do is zip this off. All the bolts are the same, so you don't have to worry. This one does have a stud. So it's a good thing we have the detail. So again, this is the Chevy. It doesn't really make a difference at this point. If you're unaware, the person's unaware, it's super quick to tell a Chevy if it's a Ford other than the input shaft. The Chevys have an aluminum extension housing on the four-wheel drives, and the Dodge ones have iron. I think maybe the early Chevys have iron too, actually. But either way, input shafts are different. Tail shafts are different too. So you kind of got to get used to that. Another thing you should bring with you is a pry bar, because this is how you'll pop that top off, is by putting something in there. I can't do it with my fingers, so I'm going to grab one real quick. So this part is on dowels, so try to lift it up straight and even. Okay, so then your forks will slip out like that. And I pretty much guarantee when you take the top off, if it's anything but super clean looking, just walk away from it. If you don't plan on rebuilding it. If you're buying it to rebuild it, it can be a different story. But if it is nasty on the inside, walk away. There's the only way that happens if you have a bad bearing and you're cooking something. So this thing looks pretty good on the inside. See, the Synchros all look pretty nice. They don't have any wear. Now that means absolutely nothing. I'm going to switch over to my phone because it films up close a little better. All right, guys, so here is the inside. And of course, everything looks perfect. So it doesn't mean it is perfect. It just means that it looks that way. And that's fairly normal. So this is unsynchroed reverse. Newer ones will have a synchro right there, and the older ones don't. Okay, so that's your synchro ring right there. You'll have one of those next to each slider. Some of them are harder to get to than others. It's easier not on camera. Focus. There you go. Okay, so when those things go bad, or when they start going out, they wear out. But they don't wear out physically looking at them. So they all look perfect. But when they're wore out, what'll happen is you'll be able to actually slide. I can't get this thing to focus. Right here. Come on, phone. All right, there we go. So if you can just take this Synchro, which is not this part, but the part in, if you could take that Synchro and just slide it right up and touch the other gear that it goes to, see it's loose. if you can just take it up and touch it onto there, that Synchro is bad. And that's bad because what happened, the inside material, and this is what was somewhat novel when these transmissions first came out, required that special fluid, the Synchro mesh. That's that liner right there. That liner is wearing out, and this is a cone. So as that liner wears out, the cone, it can move farther and farther on the gear, and then it gets to the point where it will touch. It won't actually be able to slow, oops. It actually won't be able to slow that. That was dumb. It won't be able to slow down that gear. Let me get that out of there real quick. Okay, well, that Synchro lives down there now. I dropped it. It slid all the way under. I just have to take the side cover off. It doesn't matter. I rebuild all these before I use them anyway, so I'm not super worried about it. But I was showing you it. Anyway, so that Synchro, you should not be able to pull all the way up and touch. So this Synchro right here is in really good shape. I still have a really good amount of distance there. There's a lot of life left on it. This one's not as quite as nice. See, this one gets quite a bit closer. It still has life left, but it's not new. It doesn't have nearly as much life as this one. So now we can go to this one. Ooh. So you're looking at the space down there. This one's getting real close to being pretty much done. That one will still work, but that's not going to work for much longer. And in fact, you can see the little bit of wear on the tips of these teeth. That's from it grinding. So you can kind of see that. And I don't think you'd be able to see it. Look, there's a real good chip on it right there. I don't think you'd see that without being on my phone. That's really, really small. It looks really big on my phone. I don't think you'd actually be able to see that. Now this next one, you'll have to use a tool. You can use that little screwdriver. You might want to bring a smaller one. That one's in pretty good shape there. And that one, yeah, that one, we don't have a Synchro on that one. Okay, so sometimes there'll be a Synchro back there, but this one doesn't have it. All right, so this slide right here, so this fork, does two things. It does reverse, which is sliding it this way. And now your transmission is going backward. Whatever way you spin your input shaft, your tail shaft's going to go the other way. This is an unsynchroed one, so it shifts real easy into it. Now, to get into fifth gear, you have to go the opposite way. So you're going to want to push it that way. So if you just grab it like this, kind of spin the shaft, you should be able to get it to go in. So now you're in overdrive. That's fifth gear. So now this is where you're going to want to see if there's slop. And there's not in this one, just normal amount of play. But this one's actually in pretty good shape. So we don't have a lot of slop in there. So that's pretty good. So that ensures about 75% to 80% that your fifth gear nut isn't an issue on this transmission yet. I try to wiggle them around a lot. This one feels pretty good. The more you wiggle it, if you ever get any slippage in there, it shouldn't slip at all. I mean, you're mechanically connected. It shouldn't have any slippage. So if you're wiggling that thing like that, it should be pretty good. All right, I need to explain that a little better. If you're feeling slip, you shouldn't be. But if you are feeling slip, which you could, what you're feeling is fifth gear sliding up and down the shaft. Since they're angle cut gears, they're not straight cut gears. So as you're going back and forth, that gear's going to start walking one way or the other, and that's the slip you'd be feeling, is that gear going like that, and then it's good, and then you go the other way, you slip again, it slams the other way, and that's what you're feeling for on fifth gear. Now that can be remedied with a nut, and it's literally like putting a splint on a broken leg or a brace on a sprained knee. That it's not a fix. It's a temporary resolution, but it will get you through until you do go and rebuild your transmission, and you can do that upgraded main shaft. So if you already have a transmission and that's what's wrong with yours is the fifth gear, or maybe it keeps coming loose on you or whatever, that's the problem. You might be able to put a new fifth gear on it, put a new nut on it, Loctite the crap out, tighten it down, and it might get you through. The fifth gear is pretty cheap, and you can change it while it's in the rig. You don't have to take it apart. So you might be able to get through if you're looking to replace your transmission right now, and the only thing wrong with it is the fifth gear problem. Just to get you by, get a fifth, get a new lock nut, Loctite it on there, put it on there. You'll be good for a while, because usually the main shaft isn't the one that gets the crap kicked out of it. It's the gear itself. You just have you have less than an inch or around an inch of spline engagement on your fifth. When you go to rebuild it, put an upgraded main shaft, you got like a solid 3 inches of spline engagement. So it's not nearly as much of a concern. And they also have a shear plate system on the back of it. Again, there's that short where I explained that. So anyway, there, I explained it better in less than 2 minutes. Sorry about that. One thing I want to point out is these are pretty much in reverse order. So you got fourth, third, second, first, reverse with the shift this way, and then this will move that way, but it doesn't do anything. It's this, and then that'll be fifth, shoving that in. So they're just kind of backwards until you get here. It's reverse and then fifth. Cool stuff. So now that we're done with that, we can slip our top cover back on. Hopefully you put it in neutral beforehand. I probably should have mentioned that. The only thing that won't be in neutral still, so these should be in between the Synchros. So those are in neutral. This one you'll have to line up because they just kind of woo all over the place. So just line it up with this one, and that'll give you the best chance of being able to slip that thing right on in. Another thing, since you already have it off, you can look at your shift forks and see if people were railing on them. Discolored, a lot of wear or anything. These ones look pretty good. Some of them will have plastic on here. They'll have a plastic guide like the Ram. I don't know if this next Ram will do it, but the newer ones will have plastic. I believe once they went Synchro on reverse, they'll also have plastic on a couple of these forks. But anyway, so I always just try to get that one, like it doesn't go in there, but just hit it on there like that, like you are going to go in there. And that's going to ride on that part right here. So just put it on there like that, and that'll get you, hopefully, to where it'll just slide on just like that. So pretty easy. I made that look a little too easy, actually. But they don't always go that smoothly. Sometimes you got to mess with them a little bit. We'll just pop it on those dowels, zip your screws back in, cover up your shifter hole. I don't know why. They very rarely come with those shifters, but they are available aftermarket, especially for the Dodges. So don't worry a ton if it doesn't have the shifter. They're very inexpensive. I'll put a link down in the description below for some on Amazon. So you don't have to worry if for some reason it doesn't have the shifter. You don't have to worry too much about it. I would question it a little bit, because the reason I'd question it is if the guy's keeping the shifter, that means he replaced the transmission. So then I'd look a little bit harder at it. All right, guys. So as I zip the cover back on here, we'll go ahead and like I say, I would be negotiating a little bit on third gear on this. Third gear was obviously war. That was the one that had the wear and the little bit of chips that you could see on the phone, but you couldn't see with your naked eye. So I would have to buy that knowing that third gear was most likely going to grind, and I'd want to at least change it. So now we're going to start on the Ram one. I believe this is a 95. All right. So this that's the reverse Synchro. But that Synchro, see how that just smashes right up on there? That Synchro is on its last leg, but it's reverse. So I'm not super worried about that, but it does make you wonder why. Sometimes Synchros like that on first gear, like granny gear, and reverse, if they're war, that means that their clutch probably had air in it. And every time they tried to put it in gear from a stop, it was overly working it. So this is the hard one to see. So this is first gear, and that also looks very, very close to being wore out. I'm gonna look not through the camera. Yeah, no, it's that one's on its last leg. That Synchro, that one's real tight on there. So there's not much life left on that, if there's any life on it at all. Now let's go to this one. Man, there's not much left on that one either. Man, that one smoked too. So that's that was second gear. So that's third. Man, third gear smoked. You see how that thing's just touching? So theoretically, I should be doing this in 2 spots, one at the same time, because you can always pretty much make them touch, but that's just touching solid. So that Synchro is pretty much done. This is a very, very war transmission. So let's check fourth. See if we have any life left on fourth. So fourth gear still has some life on it, a little bit, not a lot. But fourth gear still a little bit of life. Pretty relevant though, considering the rest. Okay, so let's check our fifth. There's fifth. It feels pretty good. You're not gonna be able to see it, see in there. So fifth gear is in here. But I don't feel excessive play. Disregard this. This is just reverse. The one you're seeing kind of go, it's deceiving. Now it feels pretty good. So fifth gear is good, but this is a transition I would not bother putting in a rig. It is in need of at least synchros. Let's play with the input. And there's a decent amount of play on the input too. So this one probably needs some bearings too. Now, just overall visual on gears, making sure there's no chipped teeth or anything like that. But anything completely wonky, this is normal. It's old normal, but it's normal. But anyway, so this transmission, if they're telling you this transmission's still good, it may drive okay, but there's not much life left in it. But I can pretty much guarantee you this thing grinds all the time. So, all right, guys. So final assessment on this one. So I got a little bit of play on the input shaft. It's not bad at all. And if the synchros were all in good shape, I would run it. But the synchros are not in good shape. The synchros are basically done on this thing. There's no more life left on the synchros. So I would consider this transmission a good core. We don't have the fifth gear play. It'll be interesting to see when we take it apart, when I go to rebuild it later, if fifth gear has been updated at some point. This was a higher miles truck, and it was a very heavy use truck, being that it was a well truck. So the transmission's in great shape, which is what I find a ton on these things. Really, the main failures, if it's not a fifth gear failure, is I ran out of oil failure because of a leak. And then they're just destroyed. And I can show you a couple real good examples of that here just after this. So I'm going to throw this cover back on. This one might be a little more entertaining because it was apparently in fifth gear when I took it off. Let's see if I just did that. Yeah, no, it's definitely in fifth gear on the shifter, which is odd. Oh, here's those plastics I was telling you about. So see, these ones have plastic on them. That must just quiet it down. This one has shifted at some point in its life. We're not going to mess with it. We'll just leave that alone. But what I'm going to do... Oh, there we go. Oh, I keep going too far. Okay. Now we're back in neutral. Get that guy back in neutral. I'm going to do my little trick with my fork. Voila. In there like swimwear. Okay, so I'll zip those covers back on. I'll go show you an example of one that was ran without oil, but it won't take a trained eye to see the damage on that one. All right, guys, so I pulled out of my scrap bucket some parts. So this is a Chevy, and this one is a Ram. So you can see the Chevy's longer, but the Ram is girthier. So pick your pleasure. This right here, see, they're both made the exact same. This gear slides on here on both of them. It's only splined from here, and then it just runs on the minor diameter here. And they did that on both, and both of which have fifth gear nut issues. Imagine that. But it's not the nut that's the problem. It's that they only gave this tiny little bit of engagement, and that's what the upgraded main shafts fix. They're splined the entire way. The gear's already splined the entire way. And why they did that, I have no idea. But what happens is you start getting play on that gear then can kind of rocks back and forth, and it just slowly works that nut off.
and that's what ends up being a failure. So everyone puts all these special nuts on there to try to hold it on there. Well, when the actual problem, you're just treating a symptom. You're not treating the cause. The cause is that there. So the upgraded shafts fix that. You can actually see on this one. You see it almost looks that's not how that came. That's from pretty much, I call that from torsional vibration of a Cummins engine that does that. They don't spin perfectly smooth. They kind of, all engines do it, but the Cummins, it's a little more pronounced, where they spin fast and slow down, fast and slow down, fast and slow down every rotation. That's why, like, if you shift too early in any car, you shift too early and it rattles, you're hearing torsional vibration. It's going click, 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 click. It's just rattling all your gears, and that's what kind of causes that. Because everyone runs those at real low RPM in fifth gear since they have the power to do it, not realizing that they're destroying everything in the process. So anyway, upgraded main shafts will fix that. But if you don't have an issue and it's not time for a rebuild yet, until you start feeling issues in your fifth gear, you're gonna be just fine. You can put that extra upgraded fifth gear nut on easy enough if you want to slow down the progression of that, but it's pretty much inevitable at some point that's going to fail.